The image. Hollywood burned into your head looks like this. A war-painted warrior on horseback charging a cavalry line across open ground, feathers catching the wind, both sides riding hard toward each other like it's some kind of arranged duel. That image was built by dime novelists and studio executives. It was never built by the people who fought and died out there. The real story cuts in two directions at once, and neither one looks good on a movie poster. Here are 5 things Hollywood got wrong about Native Americans in the Old West, pulled straight from Army reports, newspaper accounts, and the archaeological record. Myth 1. It was a fair fight. Forget the open field charges. The Plains and Southwest conflicts were almost never fought that way on either side. Both sides fought by hitting the other where they were weakest, and they were both very good at it. Comanche raiders did not ride toward armed cavalry formations. They hit homesteads before dawn, took what they needed, and vanished into terrain the settlers could not follow. Apache war parties moved through canyon country like water, present, and then gone. Army officers described chasing shadows across hundreds of miles of open plains without ever finding a line to engage. One field report from the 1870s put it plainly. We cannot bring them to battle. They will not stand still long enough to be defeated. So, the Army stopped trying to win in the field and started targeting what kept people alive through winter. The Red River War of 1874 shows this most clearly. Colonel Ranald Mackenzie did not beat the Comanche in a pitched battle. He found their winter camp at Palo Duro Canyon in the Texas Panhandle, burned their food stores, destroyed their shelters, and slaughtered over 1,000 horses. The warriors were not killed. They were left alive with no way to feed themselves or to move when the cold came. That winter, bands surrendered in pieces, starving, with no other option left. The Army's own dispatches describe it as an operation targeting the means of subsistence, not the fighters themselves. The ranging companies and Texas Rangers adapted to match that same logic. Small, fast units tracked by night, struck camps at first light, burned crops, and killed anyone they found. The rules settlers brought from the East broke down inside the first decade on the frontier. By the 1860s, both sides were running the same playbook. Find the soft target, hit it hard, do not stay to fight. Neither side wanted a fair fight. Both sides wanted to win. Myth 2. The Indians were one thing. Hollywood needed a unified enemy to put across the ridgeline, so it invented one. The reality was dozens of distinct nations with their own languages, territories, military traditions, and centuries of feuds with each other that ran long before any settler showed up. Those divisions didn't disappear during the conflicts with the U.S. They became weapons. During the 1876 campaigns, including the months surrounding Little Bighorn, Crow warriors scouted for the U.S. Army against the Lakota Sioux. That wasn't collaboration with an invader. That was the Crow fighting their traditional enemy with a more powerful ally backing them. The Sioux had been pushing into Crow territory for generations. The Army just changed the math. The Pawnee served as Army scouts for the same reason. Lakota raiding parties had been hitting Pawnee villages repeatedly through the 1860s, killing and displacing entire communities. When the Army offered a way to fight back with better resources, the Pawnee took it. In the Southwest, Apache bands fought each other as regularly as they fought the United States. When Geronimo finally surrendered in 1886, Apache scouts were the ones who tracked him down and closed off his last routes. The U.S. Army used this openly. Newspaper accounts from the 1870s and the 1880s document commanders requesting specific tribal scouts because of their existing conflicts with the target band. The unified Indian resistance was also useful to the federal government for a different reason. If one chief signed a treaty, Washington could claim it covered everyone. When other bands refused to honor terms they had never agreed to, the treaty was declared broken, and the next campaign had a legal pretext. It was a system built to fail, and it failed on schedule every time. Myth 3. Bows, scalps, and tipis. Start with the weapons, because this one matters more than people realize. By the time of the Red River War, the Battle of Little Bighorn, and the Apache campaigns in the Southwest, the image of a warrior with a bow against a soldier with a rifle was already outdated. Winchester repeating rifles moved through frontier trading posts and crossed into native hands through trade, raid, and capture. At Little Bighorn in 1876, Lakota and Cheyenne warriors were carrying repeating arms while Custer's men were loading single-shot Springfield carbines. You had to work the breech, extract the casing, reload, and fire again. The warriors across the river didn't. U.S. Army after-action reports from the battle describe soldiers pinned and outgunned, not because they were outnumbered alone, but because the rate of fire coming back at them was faster than their own. The U.S. Army spent years after Little Bighorn lobbying Congress for better weapons because of what the record showed. That's documented. That's not legend. The Comanche had been mounted and trading for firearms decades before that. They acquired horses generations earlier, built an entire military culture around them, and added rifles to that platform as soon as the supply lines made it possible. Think about what that means in practice. A warrior who trained on horseback from childhood, who could fire accurately at a full gallop, now doing that with a repeating rifle. The Army was chasing that across open plains with infantry on foot and horses that weren't war-trained. The technology gap ran in the wrong direction for longer than any Western film ever acknowledged. Now, scalping. The version Hollywood gave you is a native practice that shocked civilized settlers. The record says something else entirely. Scalping was in North America long before European contact. The archaeological site at Crow Creek in South Dakota, dated to around 1325 AD, contains the remains of nearly 500 people, the majority showing evidence of scalping. No Europeans were anywhere near that site, that century, or that continent. It was already there, already embedded in the warfare cultures of the plains, as a trophy, a ritual, and a statement about what happened to your enemies. What the colonial period added was not the practice, it was a cash market for it. Colonial governments, including administrations in New England and the Mid-Atlantic, paid bounties for native scalps. The prices varied by age and sex. That is in the colonial records, not in any dime novel. Settlers collected scalps for payment, for revenge, and eventually out of habit. Texas Ranger accounts from the 1840s and the 1850s reference scalps taken in the same language the Comanche used, trophies from a fight you won. Neither side introduced it to the other. Both sides were already there. Now take the teepee, because this one reveals something about how completely Hollywood flattened these cultures into a single image. The teepee was a plain solution to a specific problem. If you are following buffalo herds across the grasslands of Kansas, Nebraska, and the Dakotas, you need shelter that comes down fast, packs onto a horse, and goes back up the same night somewhere 40 miles east. The teepee is a brilliant piece of mobile engineering. But it was never the universal native home, and the West covered a lot of different terrain. Pueblo peoples in the Southwest were building multi-story stone and adobe structures before the first European ship crossed the Atlantic. Taos Pueblo, still standing in New Mexico, was built around 1000 AD. Some of those walls are still holding. The Apache used brush wickiups, low frames of bent wood covered in brush and hide, built in a few hours and abandoned when the band moved. Tribes along the Pacific coast built cedar longhouses that could hold multiple families, with carved posts and interior walls. The architecture matched the land, the climate, and the way each nation lived. Photographs from the 1870s and 1880s, some of the earliest field photography on the plains, show Comanche and Lakota camps that were organized and deliberately positioned, situated near water, sheltered from prevailing wind, with horse lines and lookout positions. Not the scattered, chaotic encampments Western films always showed. These were working communities run by people who knew exactly what they were doing. And underneath all of it, running through every myth, every misread weapon, and misidentified home, is the one factor that decided more of this conflict than any battle ever did. Smallpox, measles, cholera, populations with no prior exposure and no built resistance. Estimates from historians and epidemiologists put native deaths from disease somewhere between 60 to 90% of some tribal populations, and much of that happened before the main wave of westward settlement. The Army did not win the frontier with rifles alone. Disease cleared the ground first. The federal government negotiated more than 500 treaties with native nations. Congressional records and Army dispatches document what happened to them. Every single one was broken. That was not drift or negligence. It was the policy working exactly as designed. Strip away the Hollywood version, and what's left is two hard, brutal cultures that fought a 300-year war with no shared rules and no agreed terms for peace. The tribes that held the plains longest weren't noble, they were effective. The settlers who eventually won weren't heroic, they were relentless. The real story doesn't fit on a movie poster, and that's exactly why nobody put it there. If you want more history that the textbooks cleaned up, watch this next. Subscribe to Saddle and Smoke if this one was worth your time.